The new Formula 1 season started with a bang, with a mixed up grid at Albert Park owing to a wet qualifying session teasing an exciting spectacle for Sunday's Grand Prix. Neither of the two title favourites started in the top 6, Lewis Hamilton ruining Mercedes' decision to stay in the pit lane while others improved on their times, dropping him to P7. A sloppy lap time from Sebastian Vettel saw the Ferrari driver start P11, 2 places behind Mercedes' second driver Valtteri Bottas. As Red Bull's Max Verstappen only struggled to P15, an opportunity arose for pole sitter Daniel Ricciardo and Ferrari's Kimi Raikkonen, who started P5, to take some key points in this first race. Ricciardo started poorly and offered a shock early lead to Haas driver Kevin Magnussen, before car troubles plagued the Dane's impressive front-running pace to give the lead back to the Australian. Ricciardo got involved in a race-ending tussle with Checo Perez, although Danny's car was undamaged. Vettel had an impressive start, gaining 7 places by the end of lap 3, climbing to P4 on the start-finish straight following damage for Raikkonen in the aftermath of the Perez-Ricciardo incident. Hamilton, however, got into a skirmish with Raikkonen, with the Flying Finn admitting fault for the incident. However, a penalty was not given. As this ended all point-scoring hopes for Lewis, his teammate drove a quiet and controlled race to secure a podium finish, finishing in behind Sebastian Vettel in P2 and Daniel Ricciardo, who took a home win to please the Aussie crowd. Ferrari lead the Constructors' battle with 30 points after Kimi placed P4, with Red Bull just behind with 25 points, all that the Bulls scored after Verstappen retired with a mechanical failure. However, the team most ruining their fate were Force India. After running P2 and 3 early on, a DNF for Perez following the Ricciardo incident, and a late scrap for Ocon against Raikkonen ended his and his team's hopes of a strong points finish. As we move on to Bahrain, you would expect things to calm down and the real order to present itself. Nevertheless, Lewis Hamilton already has an 18-point deficit to Sebastian Vettel, and Ferrari have a 15-point lead on the Mercs in the Constructors. It's up to the 2 Ferrari drivers to keep it clean here, and keep the Silver Arrows out of contention. Welcome to the Bahrain International Circuit for the second race of our F1 2018 Kimi Raikkonen Career Mode. You join me at the end of the practice session, where I have to say I am somewhat nervous going into qualifying. As you can see, the times are a bit all over the shop in practice, so perhaps not representative particularly, but in terms of raw pace we are 2.22 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel. You can see that if you compare us, for instance, to... I can't really even compare us to Lewis Hamilton because he's only on the soft tyre, but we're ahead of Bottas on the soft tyre. We're a second away from Max Verstappen on the super soft tyre. But that super soft tyre is only any good for 1 lap. I think it wears at a rate of about 8 or 9% a lap, so I don't think you can do 2 laps on it. The outlap's going to be crucial in qualifying as well, to make sure you can reduce the wear, but equally get the tyres up to temperature. And as I said in the introduction there, I think this is going to be a much more representative race in terms of the real pace. I think we could have got away with one potentially in Australia, given that it was wet and some drivers, the likes of Lewis Hamilton, didn't come into the pits. Didn't come out the pits, sorry, and set another lap time. But Kevin Magnussen's still up there. You'd have seen in the summary of the first race, if you didn't watch that Kevin Magnussen was flying in that first race. And he seems to be up there in practice. But practice not necessarily representative. I'm a bit concerned. The only thing I will say as a bit of solace is the fact that as we did set more lap times on this circuit, you can see we set a 1:31.4 on the soft tyre at the end of the session. The delta between the two is 0.6. So if you look at the first lap we did on the super softs look at the 2 laps, I guess, the second lap on each tyre, we're only a 1/10 away. So in theory we should have at least another half a second, which would put us somewhere in that 5th or 6th zone. But I feel like qualifying is going to be a different kettle of fish. Obviously the track temperature is going to be different. It's at night time, so hopefully practice is just a little bit of a blip. We've got to get some confidence for this qualifying session, and as you'd have heard in the summary, it's all about us making sure that in the end of the day we've got a good gap now to Mercedes. We are 15 points ahead of Mercedes in the Constructors. That can all go away if we have a bad Grand Prix today. So, no pressure on us, I guess, to do well here. But without any further ado, let's see how we get on in qualifying.
The cars are ready, the drivers are ready. We hope you're ready as qualifying is about to begin here in Bahrain. When it comes to getting lap time out of this circuit, it's traditionally been about maximising top speed. Do you simply remove as much downforce as possible, Hang on in the corners and max out down the straight.
The teams will have arrived with all manner of parts designed to capitalise on the long straights. The cars will be that much harder to drive in the corners, but everyone will be in the same boat.
Well, that's some interesting punditry there from Crofty and Ant, because I went for a increased top speed setup first off, but it was really hard to control the car in the corners. So we went down to a balanced default. That gave us more. It was all a bit more comfortable in the corners. The only thing I will say, yes, you can have more straight line speed. If you don't get off the corners well, it feels like it negates that. So we are going to plump, I think, for a balanced car setup. We've got 3 sets of super softs in this session, so no danger about having not having enough tyres. So I think, based on that, we might as well get out there and just do one flying lap. As I said before, the super soft is pretty useless after one lap. But let's see how we get on. I'd like to get a good representative lap in. I feel like if we have a bad lap here, that it could take all of our little confidence that we had away. We had a few adventures in the practice session into the gravel, so I think that balance setup is going to help us there. It might really plague us in the race, particularly if we are close to other cars that are a similar pace to us. But nevertheless, let's see how we go. It could all just be that, you know, we've done practice and it's been a bit of a blip. Looking at the fuel, I don't know if I'm sure that we're going to have enough fuel to do this, to be honest. I've put the fuel as low as possible, but we'll just have to drive around and do a fair amount of short shifting on this lap to make sure that we've got enough fuel to do our first flying lap. And on the practice laps that we did, I just did a flying lap. I didn't do a drive out the pits. So the aim here is just to have as little tyre wear as possible going onto the main lap. I don't think tyre temperature is going to be any sort of problem, so we can have a ginger lap round to the start-finish straight, and hopefully it's going to be a good first lap. Well, this is the crucial marker for us to come to, because the tyre wear, when you come out to do a flying lap, you start just there. So we were at 7% in terms of tyre wear. We've hardly worn the tyres at all on this opening lap, so you've got to fancy that the tyre wear is a lot better. It could just be that you get less tyre wear on an evening. Of course, the track temperature is lower. It's only 22 degrees. We've got Max Verstappen right behind us coming into this lap, so if he dives down the inside into the first corner, that's not going to be the best move. Quite a way off in that first sector, a half second off Kevin Magnussen, but Kevin Magnussen has been pretty strong over the last few races. I suppose that first sector, being mostly straights, is one that we're going to not benefit from with our setup. It feels like the second sector might be one that we improve on somewhat from having a car that's a little bit more slippy through the corners. Yeah, we've gained a couple of attempts on Magnussen through that second sector. It's not as big a gain as I wanted, I have to say. But it's going to be a big improvement on our lap time this weekend. Remember, I think it was a 1:31 we did, wasn't it, in the practice session. So this is going to come in as a 1:29 something. We've held Max Verstappen up for the entire lap, unfortunately. What's it going to be? Is it going to beat Kevin Magnussen? It's going to slip us in just behind K-Mag. It's a 1:29.4. Because we haven't had many drivers set laps, it's difficult to know what that is really representative as. The tyre wear, you can see actually, the tyre wear is a lot less at night, so I think you could do 2 laps on a set of super softs, but we've only put enough fuel in to do 1 lap on this occasion, so let's come into the pits, see what our pace is like. Sebastian Vettel, wow, that is massive, so he's a second and a half in front of us. We've got to think of something how we can get quicker. We'll analyse the sector times and see if there's anywhere in particular that was slow. I think we might have made a mistake here with the setup. We're losing a lot of time in that first sector. When you compare our lap time to Sebastian, then we're nearly a second behind, all in that first sector, and you're just not going to claw that back over the lap. We're 4 tenths down in the second sector. The third sector is pretty comparable, but it's all that time we're losing in the first sector. So is that just the 2 straights? But ultimately, if you've got a little bit more straight line speed, I wouldn't have thought that would be giving us an entire second at this point. It's interesting. But early on, in the end of the day, we're P7 at the moment, noting that, well, there's 6 drivers that haven't set a lap time, but you would think possibly Hamilton, maybe Perez might beat us, so we're in the top 10 on pace, but it's not looking that good for us at the moment. Let's get out there, put a bit more fuel in the car for this one, so we can do 2 laps. And then I think, at the end of the session, it's just going to be a 1 lap thing, see if we can use that third set of super softs to extract more pace. But ultimately, more laps around this track should give us more confidence. Got to stay off the curbs as well. As soon as you go onto the curbs, particularly in the corners when you're hitting the apex, the car just doesn't want to respond when you go onto the curbs. It gets all out of shape. But we're P9 at the moment. That isn't a great starting position, particularly when you consider that even if we're not going for the championship this year, we should be a rear gunner to support Sebastian Vettel to win the championship for the Scuderia. And 9th place just ain't going to cut it. Okay, so that's an improvement in the first sector. I think we're a couple of tenths up. It's 1800ths up in that third sector, but it is an improvement nevertheless, noting that we have got a bit more fuel in the car this time. We've got 2 laps to do it, so this could be a slight improvement. This is better. This is better. I know it's nowhere near Seb, but it halves the time that we're behind at least. 6 tenths up, I think we were on the delta in that second sector. We're losing time down that straight. Again, we got onto the curbs, as you would have noticed, just out of the corner. And that is what loses the time. You just can't accelerate when you get onto those curbs. But we're gaining slightly on our delta. We're okay. And that puts us up to P4. That is much better. But we have got time to do a second lap here and the fuel. So let's see if that's another improvement. About halfway around, the delta's looking in the wrong direction. So I don't think it's going to be an improvement here. We're going to run it to the end of the lap. What's the harm? We could gain some time, definitely, out of this section, I feel. Particularly going... Again, we've got onto the curbs. And that has definitely finished the lap. So, spoke so soon. I think that was the kiss of death. But P4 at the moment, I feel like there's more pace to come from somewhere. What was the lap time that Seb did? Because 1:27.9. The Red Bulls don't seem to be on the pace. 1:29.2. Max Verstappen is 13th. So you'd think he'd have more time. So I'm hoping that that lap there has done enough, at least to push us into P6 as a minimum. But we would like to definitely be above the Red Bulls, which we are at the moment. But if Red Bull have more pace in that car, we need to respond. Well, I think this last lap could be ruined already. We've come out into traffic. Look at Stoffel. Oh, come on, Stoffel. He's on the racing line. We're not going to have enough fuel to get us back. That was really shoddy from Stoffel Van Dorn there. I mean, look at... You know, we're coming up to the corner at full racing speed. You could see just from the way the car jolts forward, we had to brake. There was no way we're going to go up the inside there and risk damage. And unfortunately, that has ended our qualifying session. That is rather unfortunate, and I have to say, I think Stoffel Van Dorn deserves a penalty for that. That is just not on at all. But disappointing nevertheless. We're going to retire from the current session. We know we can't improve, so where are we going to end up in this qualifying session? So as I expected, the Red Bulls did have more pace and they have overtook us. We're in 6th for a long way off the top 3. I think the best we can probably hope for tomorrow is to battle with the 2 Red Bulls, try and take P4, and hope that Seb can beat the 2 Mercedes. I'm just interested because Seb had such a delta to those 2 Mercs. He didn't improve on his second lap round, so that would suggest maybe that was his maximum pace. Or he did get held up. None of the sector times looking particularly bad. They were all very comparable, to be honest. Well, he's only half a tenth behind, so maybe that was his full pace. Further down the grid, though, another strong showing from Haas, 7th and 10th on the grid. Let's come down to the bottom of the grid. Any shocks? Stoffel Van Dorn's only 18th. Well-deserved Stoffel. But a bad day for Toro Rosso. They had a good day at Melbourne. But as I said before, I think this race is going to show the real pace. I don't know whether we go for a different strategy here to try and upset the apple cart with Red Bull, but we haven't got much of a delta to the cars behind. I don't think we can take that risk. If we had half a second, say, to Grosjean and Hulkenberg behind in terms of our raw pace, knowing in the back of my mind that we could have improved there, we could go for that different strategy. And the reason I say half a second is that the delta to that soft tyre is about half a second. I'll ponder it over the next few minutes and see what strategy we go for.
Hello and welcome, where it's all eyes on the grid and the final preparations ahead of today's championship race.
Well, first of all, let's hope that everyone's well behaved and we can have a nice incident-free start. That initial release is going to be the most interesting thing. The clean side of the grid will be better rubbered in, so keep an eye out for cars over there potentially making their way through.
After the points finish last race, let's aim to keep the momentum going.
Thank you. Want more than a few points, I would say. Well, it's definitely going to be a one-stop. That's fairly obvious. I am having difficulty here in deciding what strategy to go for. I think fuel load we keep the same. And I just don't know if we take a risk that it's going to pay off. I think we've got to stick. We've got to stick with what we're doing and know in our heart of hearts that we can try and fight with the Red Bulls. I think anything more is going to be difficult today, barring any mechanical failures or dramas for those up front, which is something that we have seen happen. But let's see how we get on. We are going to go with the super soft tyre. It seems everybody's going on the same strategy. We'll just confirm that on the race director. Everybody is going for that super soft tyre to start with. So it's ironic here that the two drivers who had the best chance at the Australian Grand Prix, which were obviously ourselves and Daniel Ricciardo, are the furthest down of the top six. We expected this here. We knew that Australian Grand Prix session was somewhat of an anomaly. And I feel like the race is going to be a lot more standard here too. We're going to have to get our elbows out a lot more here. I think we were helped by the fact that we had slower cars in front holding the likes of Daniel Ricciardo up in the last race. But nevertheless, this is going to be a challenge for us. I don't think we've got the outright raw pace, maybe even to challenge Red Bull in this Grand Prix. But I certainly hope we do, because if we don't, we're not helping our teammate Vettel out. And the points that Hamilton lost in that first race, I think that's going to be key to try and keep that points gap to a nice gap, so that if there are any mistakes made, just give us somewhat of a cushion. But Valtteri Bottas has done the rear gunner game for Mercedes, qualifying second today. We didn't do our bit. We should have beaten at least one Red Bull. I know there were mitigating circumstances, you could say, with the fact that Stoffel Van Dorn got in the way. But ultimately in this sport, you make your own luck. The grid is forming up then for the second race of the year. The stands are packed for this Grand Prix in Bahrain. One thing that is to our advantage, we have got the inside line going into the first corner. But let's not do anything silly. A lot of the wheel-to-wheel combat we've had so far hasn't ended particularly well. The lights held for a long time again. It's not a good start for Max Verstappen, but we haven't made a great getaway either. It feels like the first phase of that start was much better than the second phase. And there's room up the inside of Max Verstappen here. We're going to have to put it full lock as we touch wheels with Max Verstappen coming out of the first corner. But that is an okay start. The front four have really gone. Max Verstappen, though, coming up to turn 3. Can we outbrake the Dutch driver? Oh! That's two lines of combat we've took with Max Verstappen so far on this first lap. It feels like Verstappen's had quite a poor start. We need to try and get past Max as soon as possible, but we've got to do it cleanly, something that is proving quite difficult for us because the AI are quite challenging in their defence. It is having to find different inventive ways to get past these guys. There is a yellow flag. That looks like it's further back in the field, and I don't think it's anything that we've caused, so we're okay there. But you can see the front four are streaming away. Max Verstappen didn't have a good start. No doubt not helped by the certain tussles with us going into turn 1 and 3 there. But Max Verstappen is starting to pull away a bit. Hulkenberg is sticking to our back. I think the rest of the guys are quite a way behind. The crucial thing, I think, actually, which does support our decision for going for the super soft tyre, is I don't think we'd have been able to keep in that DRS delta if we'd have been on the soft tyre. As you can see, through the corners, we are faster than Verstappen, but Verstappen seems to go away a bit. But that being said, it feels like we've got a slipstream effect on the start-finish straight here. Verstappen could be relegated now to P6. We go up the inside. Verstappen brakes a little bit later than us, but we have to take the racing line. Verstappen's going to stop there. We give him the racing room he deserves, but he pulls out of that one. And that is a nice, clean move with racing room and respect given. Hulkenberg's now right on the back of Max Verstappen. The problem that now gives us is that we haven't got DRS from in front. That means that the guys in front are going to sail away. I suppose something we could have done there is stick onto the back of Max Verstappen to a degree and just try to get the DRS effect to bring us back up to the pack. But that doesn't look like that's going to happen. Verstappen and Hülkenberg are fighting behind. We are in a bit of a race of our own, and I think that's pretty, I would say, inevitable today. I feel like we could just be battling with Verstappen. If Ricciardo comes back to us, it could be P4. But the front three, as we expected, are going to be out of reach. And that could be the front four, not just the front three. So as a comparison, we are way off. Of 1:32 dead was the lap time we set. The fastest lap from Lewis was a 1:30.3. But if we take the gap from the first sector of the last lap to the start-finish line, we were 2.6 behind Ricciardo. We're now 2.7 behind Ricciardo. So the gap isn't that significant. Max Verstappen, though, has come back to us on this lap. Max is going to put it up the inside. We have to hang it round the outside. But it looks like Max is going to take that position. He doesn't have as much pace, though, out of the corner. Can we get him into this one? Two abreast doesn't really go. But we've got back past Max Verstappen. I have to say this fight, particularly through the corners, isn't going to help either of us in terms of our race pace. Just going to slow us down, making sure that we keep it clean rather than taking the ideal lines through these corners. But Nico Hülkenberg, credit to him, has hung on really well. You can see that there's, I think that's probably going to be Sergio Perez in P8 who's got quite a line forming behind him. Another problem that we've got, okay, I think we're going to stop on lap 6, is that the tyre wear has been lethal on this. As you can see, I don't know if we started on used tyres, because from memory, at the end of lap 2, our tyre wear was 23%. We're now at 29%, 6% a lap, so that doesn't really correlate with having new tyres. You can see from the gaps at the front that battle with Max Verstappen did not help us at all. We're now 4.1 seconds behind Daniel Ricciardo. Again, we kept the pace okay on the last lap. Us fighting with Verstappen just didn't help. And I do wonder, obviously the race could have gone differently, whether if we did start on the softs, yes, we might be behind Verstappen and Hülkenberg, but at least we'd have the DRS effect. We wouldn't be hurting our tyres as much. And then, of course, we'd have a bit more pace later on. But ultimately, what's done is done. We've gone with this strategy. We've committed to it now. Daniel Ricciardo, you can see from the minimap, is quite away from the front runners, so it's definitely now a three-horse race. Daniel Ricciardo's on his own. We need to work, I think, at getting our head down and trying to catch Daniel Ricciardo. On the clean sectors where we're not battling Verstappen, we are keeping pace with Daniel Ricciardo, but we can't just keep pace. We've got to gain on the Australian. So I thought we were pitting on lap 6. This is actually saying lap 5 for us to pit. I do feel that could be a little bit early. We'll have to see what the cars do in front of us. The softs do last, though, here, in fairness. A lot better than the super softs. And if that's what the team are suggesting we do, I have to say we go with them. I have got a concern that behind us, if we do get a lot of cars into the pit lane, I think we have got a 3-4 second delta, to be fair. So we should be okay there. I'm just nervous about getting held up in the pits. Obviously, our pit box, I think it's the same here, that it's quite early on rather than late, so we are under threat from the guys behind, but I think we should just be about okay. I think we'll stick with the team's suggestion to pit this lap. It might be a case we do the opposite of what Verstappen does, unfortunately, unless Red Bull do decide to double stack, which I'd be surprised at. We should get an indication of that from what Daniel Ricciardo does up ahead. So what I think we're going to do is do the opposite of what Danny Rick does, because it's Danny Rick we want to catch. So Danny Ricciardo's pitted. That means Max Verstappen will stay out. Ultimately, we know we've probably got the measure on Max Verstappen just about. You can see Seb's 8.4 seconds ahead of us already. We know we've pretty much got the measure on Max Verstappen. As he goes up the inside of us, we should be able to hang this one, though. Just keep to our racing line, and that'll bully Max Verstappen out of the way. But unfortunately, that gives us a poorer run out of the next corner. Is Max going to dive up the inside? He doesn't decide to on this occasion. But what we know is that we've pretty much got the measure of Max Verstappen in this race. The only way we're going to catch up to Ricciardo, because it's not going to be through sheer pace, is to do something a little bit different. And whether that is having slightly fresher tyres at the end of the race, whether that will make a difference or not, I don't know. But I feel like we have to go for it. Time to box then. Looking at the mini-map, Danny Rick's been held up behind the Williams. Just got to be careful. We do take it slow there, just to make sure that we don't do anything silly with the speed limit, so engage the clutch. No! The guys are coming in behind. This hasn't worked at all. Is there a gap? There's not a gap. Damn! Oh, man. And there goes Daniel Ricciardo down the start-finish straight. I thought we'd have enough of a delta. Verstappen's had the same problem, fortunately for us. But crucially, the big winner there is Nico Hülkenberg. We're under pressure from Sergio Perez as we come out here. We're just going to have to do almost like a block pass into the first corner. Man. I guess we could have had the same... Well, we'd have probably had the same issue, but to a larger extent on the previous lap. So I don't think we'd have got away with it, whatever we would have done there. That really supports the fact we could have run the soft tyres earlier on, you know. Ah, man. But the big winner there, as I think I said before, is the Hulk. He's jumped both us and Max Verstappen. Max is in a much more perilous position for us than us, because he got overtook by Perez and Grosjean in all of that. But I don't know if we've even got the pace to catch Hülkenberg, because to be fair to the Hulk, he did have some quite strong pace. He was keeping up with Max Verstappen, whether that's just because he had the assistance of DRS that was keeping him in the battle. There's a Ferrari and a Mercedes battling in front. I think that means then that Seb would have possibly jumped Valtteri Bottas in the pits. I think Lewis Hamilton is going to be in the lead of this Grand Prix. We're 7 seconds behind Nico Hülkenberg. We're coming up to the line. There's going to be 7 laps left, so we've got to be a second quicker than the Renault to get that 5th place back. I think we're going to struggle to do that somehow, but we'll give it our best. 6 laps to go then, and we've gained a second and a half on Hülkenberg on that lap. Well, 1.4 seconds. Crucial thing, we did run on rich mix on that lap. We've just got to manage the fuel a little bit, but ultimately, I want to make the car as light as possible so that we have the best chance of catching the Hulk. But we want to leave ourselves, I would say, with 0.3 of a lap just to be safe. And it'd be interesting to see what impact only having standard fuel mix on this lap makes to that gap. It was 5.6, it's now 4.9. So if you take the average over the 2 laps, we have gained the 2 seconds that we need. But obviously the majority of that came on the previous lap. So I don't know whether we're going to have to just be really cheeky and push the fuel here. I'm going to put it into rich mix again. This could be a risk, knowing that if we get past Hülkenberg, we can probably put it into lean mix and try and defend from the Renault. But it feels like in terms of what we're gaining, that's the only way we're going to do it. I think we're going to run out of laps here. We have gained the second again, but we did dip into that rich fuel mix. The positive thing about all this, though, is that we don't have any pressure from behind. I think if we were battling behind, that's not going to help. As I said, getting on the curbs is something we don't want to do. We didn't follow our own advice there. That's probably lost at least a couple of attempts from drive out of that corner. But we haven't had as bad a race as Verstappen, because Verstappen has got really caught up in that battle behind. He's still battling with Sergio Perez, and you can see even to us that's lost him a lot of time. And Nico Hülkenberg is the man who has gained most from this. We've got 4 laps to go. The gap was 4 seconds at the line. That mistake, you would say, out of the first corner has cost us 4 tenths. I think it's going to take either a mistake from Hülkenberg or finding some miraculous pace, which you would suggest at this point of the weekend would be unlikely for us to get those extra 2 points on the board. Not a great lap that time round, a 32.4. We're 3.5 seconds behind Nico Hülkenberg, so that is the first lap that we've not achieved the 1 second delta per lap that we need, and that I think is going to cost us. We can see him just up there in the distance, and the gap's 2.5, so we did get that second again on that lap, I think. I think it was 3.5. What does come into play as well at this late stage is that our tyres are a lap newer than Nico Hülkenberg's. I'd definitely assume so. I'd have thought that, he passed the pit straight as we were coming out the pit lane, so he definitely pitted on that previous lap, that's for sure. But even with that, I think we're hoping a little bit too much, really, that we're going to have a chance here. And we've got to get within that second on this lap, because you only get the DRS early on. There's a yellow flag up ahead. What's happened up ahead? There's a Mercedes that's very slow. Who is it? It's Lewis. Wow. And Lewis Hamilton's start to his season has just gone from bad to worse. On the penultimate lap, Hamilton pulls out with what I can only assume you can see. He's pulled over there. can only assume it's a mechanical failure. But Lewis Hamilton, well, that's going to put him under massive pressure now. I think Seb was running second, so it looks like he's going to win this Grand Prix. And the gap between Hamilton and Vettel is going to be 43 points after 2 races. That is huge. But let's focus on our battle with us and Nico Hülkenberg. We can see him. I think it would have been one more lap. I know we've got one more lap left, but the DRS really is going to come in halfway around the lap at latest. What's the gap to the Hulk? It is 1.6, and we know our first sector is not our strong point. Can't see us getting that gap back unless the Hulk makes a mistake. A P5 finish with Hamilton going out does give us an amount of solace, because we know that out of all the 3 constructors who had the best day today, Max Verstappen obviously having a poor day in the Red Bull. And if Seb wins, another 35 points to the Ferrari cause, but it isn't going to be Seb because Bottas is leading the race. So I possibly read that wrong, of Seb being ahead early on. This is going to be our last chance to overtake here into this DRS zone, and I don't think we're going to have that 1 second gap. We have, however, gained about 7/10 on Hülkenberg in this second sector on previous laps, so we could make a dive into the last corner. I'm noting our fuel mix. I think we keep it until the end of this second sector. If the gap is too much, which I think it's going to be, we're going to have to stick down into lean just to make sure we get to the line. Valtteri Bottas has won the Bahrain Grand Prix. We have got that 9/10 gap now. I don't think it's going to be enough. We've got to make sure we get to the end of this race at the end of the day. One more lap and I think we would have done it. But we do get up to 5th in a fashion that's not controlled by us, being that obviously Lewis Hamilton has retired from this Bahrain Grand Prix. But as the fireworks show, I have to say it's not been a great weekend for us. A couple of mitigating factors. Could we have gone on the soft tyres from the start and not had that problem in the pits? Ultimately though, that wouldn't have put us on the podium. We hadn't got the pace all weekend round. We were 4 seconds behind Danny Rick going into the pits, and realistically I don't think we'd have caught that back. So P4 would have been all we could have achieved today with Lewis Hamilton retiring, but take that out of the equation, I think P5 is the best we could have done. But we talked about the Finns, and the other Finn who could take the place of the flying Finn, really, he's doing a better job at the moment. Took a podium when his teammate didn't perform in the last race. I can't remember who took him out in the last race. But this time when Hamilton had a mechanical failure, he was ahead of Sebastian Vettel. And he's took 7 points off us, crucially, and he's keeping Mercedes alive in the Constructors' Championship. Solid weekend for Daniel Ricciardo again in 3rd place. Crucially, it's the exact same drivers on the podium this time, just in reverse order. Valtteri finished 3rd in that first race. He's top of the pile this time. Another 2nd place for Sebastian Vettel. Be interested to see what the gap is between them. I swear there was a Mercedes and a Red Bull fighting, a Mercedes and a Ferrari fighting, so you wouldn't have thought that gap would be significant. But Daniel Ricciardo comes home to what was a very lonely 3rd, but you have to say, really, driver of the day has to be Nico Hülkenberg. So let's have a look then. So Seb was 2 seconds behind Valtteri at the end. So I think they definitely had a battle, but it obviously didn't come to much in the end. So Davidson's give Esteban Ocon driver of the day for getting from 14th place to 8th. Obviously everybody in the top 6 gained place because Lewis Hamilton retired from the Grand Prix. If you look at our pace in the end, in fairness, our fastest lap was pretty comparable to Daniel Ricciardo. We were only a 10th off that fastest lap. Max hadn't really got the pace all weekend round. Lewis at 1:30.3 was his fastest lap. So he was fastest in this race, a second quicker than us. We just weren't going to compete with that pace today. But 5th place, you know, it's okay. But what was it, 14 laps, 15 laps? We were a second and a half down a lap. That is pretty sobering against our teammate in equal machinery. You can see that it's Valtteri Bottas and Daniel Ricciardo sharing the foils at the front of the championship. Did the Hulk finish? He got 6th, didn't he, in the last race? So that's an incredibly good start for the Renault team. And Nico Hülkenberg propping those guys up in the constructors. But Lewis Hamilton, bottom of the World Championship. You have to say, even from here, it's a long way back. But he's only 36 behind Vettel rather than 40. I focus on those two because, especially based on today, I don't think Danny Rick would have the pace to take the battle to Lewis or Seb in a World Championship fight. And Mercedes are always going to back their number one driver, Lewis Hamilton, against Valtteri Bottas. That being said, if things get any worse, I'll probably go for Valtteri Bottas over Lewis because the points gap could just get too much. But we have done our job. It wasn't really us, it was Seb doing the job, and the fact that Mercedes had a retirement. We're 18 points ahead of Mercedes. We started the day, I think, 15 points ahead of Mercedes and 10, what was it? It was 5 ahead of Red Bull. So we have gained there. The midfield battle sees Renault moving to 4th, which mirrors actually what happened in real life. Renault finished 4th, Haas finished 6th. Really strong points finish for Force India today, a 6th and an 8th. And you have to feel really that if the Australian Grand Prix would have gone right for them, they'd have been in a pretty distant 4th. And what I mean by that is quite a distance away from Renault. McLaren 2 points, Sauber 1. Don't think any of the bottom 4 teams scored anything today. Brendan Hartley got 6 points in the first race. Good race for Romain Grosjean, finished 9th. Well, he actually started 7th, so quite a poor showing in the end there, really. Any stories further down the grid? I don't really think so. Stoffel Van Dorn just didn't have the pace this weekend. Started 18th and finished there. Incidents in terms of the race director. Ocon and Leclerc had a gap coming together, so a lot less dramatic than that first race. The only difference, Lewis Hamilton, a mechanical failure, and he doesn't score again. So the next one, we move on to China. I've actually thought over the years that Bahrain's one of my better tracks, so that makes me incredibly nervous going into the Chinese Grand Prix next up. But that is going to be in the next video. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I certainly have done. As I pretty much rumoured in qualifying, that has been a pretty sober Grand Prix for us here, only finishing P5. But hopefully our pace improves in China. I think possibly I might do a bit more practice going into it. We obviously have the sole practice session, but I do think the time trial laps did help us going into that Bahrain Grand Prix. There's no question about that. But just a bit of a preview, really, for the next race here in China. That is Kimi. Come on, Kimi, we need to improve. And he's nodding there. He agrees with us. Need to improve, definitely, coming into this next race. It's overcast at China, but I don't want to spoil too much, so I'm going to leave you here for now. And if you've enjoyed that, leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe for more F1 2018 content. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you in the next one. And I'll leave you with the star of that race, Nico Hulkenberg.